I'm just gonna record. Okay, I've started the recording for now.
Okay.
But I'm still gonna have to depend on Hardik because it looks like it says I don't have permission to go live on YouTube or a custom live streaming service. Let me try that. It doesn't work that way. Hardik, can you try one last time?
I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying.
Okay, so thanks everyone who's joined in, and sorry for the wait. Once we figure out if the live streaming happens, we'll go ahead in 2 minutes irrespective.
We had a really good response to our 30 under 30 this year.
Oh, really? That's really okay.
Like for the first time ever, I don't know how this has happened, but we have like the largest single contingent of people who applied are actually distance learning people.
That is amazing.
We never have anybody from WILP apply. Usually there'll be like one or two. Right. I don't know, maybe it's big through BITSians for each other, or I don't know what it is, but it's like a very large group of people, bigger than any single campus, which was very surprising.
We actually are working pretty hard to kind of get the WILP people into the whole alumni space, because I think for the longest time they were not as, you know, like they didn't like recognize themselves as BITSians because they've not been to the campus. But I don't know if you're aware, but Sundar, who is the current COO of BITSAA International, he's also a WILP candidate, and basically we have really, you know, kind of
that's interesting.
To integrate
that's very good
as a part of the alumni network. I think he's made a huge difference, especially.
So you should put that out, or tell Pramila to at least, she should mention this point that we have for the first time ever, we have somebody on the management team who is WILP. I think that'd be pretty cool.
He's been super active as such in the BITSAA space for a while, in fact. And I met him in BGM last year.
I see.
And yeah, I think having him, especially like in the executive team, has been very beneficial.
Oh, that's very good.
Drive it forward. Yeah, and I think it's amazing that lots of WILP people are able to engage with us.
We always have a very good response, but I'm like, now we're at a point where we're like, how do we process all these people? We're already at 250 folks, and we have a very specific process we go through. So now, now to go from 250 to 30, and we still are, I think we are still 5 days away from closing applications and some other stuff. So
that is amazing. Amazing. Okay, I'm looking forward to just you know, see the profiles.
Yeah, I'm doing like it's happening the way. Yeah.
All right. So are we live on YouTube as well?
Yeah, we'll be in 2 minutes. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. As soon as we're ready, I will start with introductions. Let me know. In the meantime, anyone else who's joined, if they would like, you can introduce yourself in chat, mention your batch, etc.
Everyone uses a different form of what WILP is. Somebody calls it integrated learning. Somebody calls it WILP. Somebody calls it e-learning.
I thought longest time they called it distance learning.
Yeah, and I see distance learning too. I guess some of the older folks say that. I think it'd be good to have a single brand. I don't like the word WILP.
I think WILP is like the common kind of.
The word WILP lacks a coolness factor. I wish there was something more cooler than just WILP. Like WILP is not like action oriented. Like the most exciting word I think is Goa.
Yeah. But how do you like expand on Goa to make like
you can't
distance
expect me to
learning
go.
or whatever.
I think Pilani is exciting because I'm from Pilani, but if somebody says a Goa, that instantly so how was that?
Yeah. All right. Hardik, are we ready or I just go ahead for now?
I think you should go ahead the way, like we shouldn't wait more.
Okay, great. Because we're recording, it's fine. We could just put the recording later on YouTube. So thanks everyone for joining in.
Yeah, no worries.
Good evening, wherever you are right now. So really excited to, celebrate 1 year of BITSAA Sahaaya initiative today on World Mental Health Day, 10th October. In the past 1 year, we have supported hundreds of BITSians to get engaged in a conversation to raise mental health awareness and reduce the stigma. In the process, we have had a number of BITSians reach out to our helpline, and we have been able to support them. For today's session, I am Divya Nawale. I'm 2000 PFO PS 297, and I helped found the BITSAA Sahaaya initiative with a number of board members at BITSAA International. And I'm very honored today to be able to talk to Anupendra Sharma, who's one of the co-founders of BITSAA International, a huge inspiration to me, and of course to every BITSian worldwide. And I'm gonna read his bio very quickly because it's amazing. I don't know how many pauses I'm gonna take, but I'm really excited to share, just the stage with him today on this conversation. So Anupendra holds a master's in economics and bachelor's in instrumentation engineering from Pilani. He graduated in 1992. At Pilani, he was the president of Economics Association. He edited 3 magazines, so that's Sandpaper, Zero Deficit, and the Instrumentation magazine, and captained his wing cricket team. Anupendra was involved in a few lead supporting and mostly unmemorable, I don't know what he means by that, but unmemorable roles in Hindi and English theatre, except for one. We'll talk about the one later. During Oasis, when he wasn't on the D-Lawns, he was in choreography, in choreo and fashion parades, where BITS came in second on both occasions. So really, you're the coolest person ever, Anupendra, because if you did dance and pastry, that's huge. During Oasis, he also ran Joe's Garage, BITS' first ever discotheque. After leaving Pilani, Anupendra completed a master's in accounting and finance at the Manchester Business School, and then joined PwC in London as an accountant, and later at Ford Motor Company, where he helped set up Ford in both China and India. He then went on to Cornell for his MBA with 2 other BITSians, where he worked with his classmates to start a shrimp farm in Central America. He also met his wife in class and learned to fly a plane. Upon graduation, he worked in investment banking on Wall Street. The dream to work on Wall Street was actually seeded at BITS when he did economics and read 1984, the novel, and then Liar's Poker. After working at JP Morgan and Citigroup, he joined Siemens in the M&A group and lived in New York when the World Trade Center came down during 9/11. It was the year that he co-founded BITSAA International in the memory of his classmate and prize, Sandpaper 2.0, Center of Entrepreneurial Leadership, Mantra Awards, and 30 Under 30 Awards as his own initiative. So really, I mean, that's like almost everything BITSAA does. Anupendra then worked for 12 years in venture capital, investing in healthcare companies. He also runs an organization to educate startup CEOs called Startup Leadership Program, which has been launched in 29 cities in 13 countries, and they've together raised $3.4 billion US. He's now chasing his dream of being an entrepreneur himself and working on a startup to gain a better understanding of diseases. I mean, that's quite a huge bio, and I'm just gonna say this again, that really BITSAA International exists today as one of the strongest and most close-knit alumni communities in the world because of something that came out of your initiation and something that you thought about for the well-being of your classmates and beyond that, right? You didn't think of just your batches or people around you in the area, but you wanted to take it global. So I think, thank you, Anupendra, first of all, for making time today, especially on this 1-year celebration and World Mental Health Day. So I really want to start with asking you a question. What I'll do is I will be asking you a few questions. followed by, like opening it up to audience to ask questions as well. So I think we'll start with the whole question of the story. We want to know from you the story of how BITSAA International was initiated and set up, because it was the year following the 9/11, in the wake of 9/11. So can you please share with us what it was about, and what do you think is the key reason it has become one of the most successful alumni networks in the world?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Divya. And for all of you on here, I don't know you guys, but I know Divya. But I think Sahaaya is a very important initiative. So kudos to you guys for doing it and for having survived this first year, which is always the hardest of anything that you start. I remember my first year of BITSAA. BITSAA was started because we had a classmate. His name was S.S. Sheshadri. Sheshadri was one of these larger than life personalities with a big laugh who we loved, who we called the gentle giant, who was in our wing in campus. We were Eco 87 batchmates. We all hung out together. And Sesha joined Pilani, I think, when he was 15 or 16. He came from Ney Valley. A lot of kids from Ney Valley came very young. And then so sort of he was this, and we all hung out together and had a Eco 87 batch, just had a fantastic time as a group, very tightly knit community. So when Sesha moved to the US, I remember being on a visit much later after he died, but to talk to one of the classmates. But basically, at some point in his life in Sesha, when he moved to the US, he became isolated and lonely. And in being isolated and lonely, he lost touch with his batchmates. And then I think he struggled in some ways socially. Maybe it was emotionally, not exactly sure, since he's not in touch with anybody. We couldn't construct how it all happened, but he basically went back to India and took his own life. And that was a very tough moment for us because we all felt like we'd failed him, and maybe for me more than other people, I took it very personally. So basically, the idea behind BITSAA actually started with just me sending a text to a friend of mine. I'd written to his father and had a call with his dad. And then it just happened that I just wrote I think it was Messenger. We had AOL at the time. So I just wrote to Venu and I said, I want to do a scholarship in his name in Pilani. So we should just gather money. And Venu said, hey, we're BITSians. We're not just going to gather money. We're going to have a music night. So we decided to do a music night in Edison, New Jersey. And while we were preparing for this music night, 9/11 happened. And what started off with like a group of us getting together became big because another classmate died in 9/11. And then they wanted to put a chair in his name. And unfortunately, his wife was helping us, and his wife was so overcome with emotion, she took her own life in the midst of that, what was going on. So it was like a kind of a hard time with all that happening. And I lived in the city. But when we came together for that celebration, it was amazing. It was a house full. There's lots of people who couldn't get in. And it was like BITSians got together who'd never seen each other for the longest time. And that's how sort of BITSAA began. We we raised money that night. We started a scholarship. My wife was there, and my wife grew up here. Her dad's an IITian, so IITians are very different than BITSians. So when she saw girls and guys headbanging on the floor and somebody playing guitar with her teeth, she's like, who are these people? These are very different people than what I'm used to seeing at the IIT Tambola nights. So that was, but it was like such an incredible moment. And then that was the start of BITSAA. We announced BITSAA that night. And then we put a scholarship in both the names, S.S. Sheshadri, who was the reason we got started. And then Vamsi Pendyala, who was another batchmate who had died in one of the planes that went down. And that, because of that one single moment of 9/11 happening, what was started off as a private movement of probably 3 or 4 batches turned into this massive global thing. And then thanks to Yahoo groups, then I turned that movement into what became a global affair. Because I could see the need was everywhere. And the culture of BITSAA, the sort of motive, the whole initiative culture was like, you'll always be part of this community. We'll never let what happened to Sesha happen again. And it's happened, which is unfortunate. It still continues to happen to this day, but at least we try, and especially with what you're doing, the idea was we want to do something where you sort of never be alone as part of this situation. Whether you're a BITSian or you're a BITSian employee, you work in the messes, you're part of that community. We want everybody to feel like this community is here for you and nobody else is. So that was it. And I'm sorry for the long message and some emotions.
No, thank you so much. I could see how emotional you got. So I'm really in appreciation of, thank you for sharing that story, and also for really reminding us that everything that we're doing is for every BITSian to feel that we are all together as a family and no one is alone. And I think that's basically what has led to this community. I mean, the idea that you could go to a random city in the randomest country and then try to be like, hey, any BITSian out here, like just holler it into like Facebook or any kind of group, and like 10 people will tell you, oh yeah, of course this person is there, go meet someone there. Like if no one like I remember Dean Nattu, like I was in Argentina and I'm like, any BITSians here? And I'm like, yeah, of course there's a BITSian who owns an Indian restaurant in Buenos Aires apparently. So, and like sometimes you could like literally pass a BITSian in an airport, right? It's so funny that people, on BITSian's day, they run into each other saying, oh, no one else was there, but I met a BITSian at an airport. So this is the kind of community that we have had thanks to your initiative. And I think more than anything else, it's the idea that we are able to, be a strong knit community to help each other in every way possible, from finding a room to be able to, find the dream job. And I think it's just, it blows my mind. And I'm very grateful. I think as BITSians, we're very different from IITians for sure, because it's just another level. I've met a lot of IITians, but the kind of camaraderie that BITSians have is unmatched in the world.
Yes, and I'm super excited about the engagement of even the WILP community now, distance learning, e-learning, whatever you call it, community, because that is the beauty about being a BITSian. Whether it doesn't matter what you did, where you did it, we're often known by our extracurricular activities, not by what we studied. So the fact that that whole group is getting plugged into Pilani, for me, is actually super exciting too.
Yeah, I think it is a very exciting time indeed. And I think also the size of the BITS community is increasing every year. We have more campuses now. We have even, I think the batch sizes have increased. So it's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's very exciting. Every year you look at pictures, it's like, hundreds of people trying to fit in one picture now. It's very exciting. Wow. Okay. Let me just go on to my next question. And this is more in line with the topic or the theme of today. So what has been your own experience? I mean, we did talk about Shadri, and we did talk about another batchmates, a couple batchmates you mentioned, and their spouse as well, who struggled mentally. But what has been your own experience after that, and seeing how mental health among fellow BITSians, among the various generations? So what has been like some of your observations, and what do you think is something that you have learned from this past 2 decades of BITSAA International about mental well-being?
Yeah, so I think I will say this. I have kids now, and I know this generation really struggles. So I see the change in generations in terms of how we approach things. I think one of the biggest changes from my time to now is the world. Even though the world is a better place, we're definitely overall, we're safer, we are richer, we are warmer in cold countries. We are overall in a much better place than we were every decade. But unfortunately, because of social media and news and this sort of increased, amped up world we live in, because hate sells better, we feel that the world is getting worse. And I think as a place, and the opportunities are getting less, and everyone's against us, and there's all this stuff which you find increasingly amped. So I do feel that, and that is, social media is a cause of much of this destruction. But I feel really empathetic towards this generation today, like coming out of Pilani now, than the generation 10 or 20 years ago who were either less clued in or less sensitive. The unfortunate part is, as the world is such a beautiful and amazing place and life is so incredible, the chance to, like, wake up and get an education and do whatever we want with our lives is so incredible, yet we feel lonely or detached and sort of feel like everything's coming against us. It's because we have not been trained, or we have not been, I feel almost, when you're younger, brought up to cope with all this stuff that's being thrown at us that's negative all the time. So I do feel that life is incredible. It passes by in a blink. And whatever we do, we should not forget that I remind my kids every day. I said, when you go to school, there's nobody chasing in the back because you're a girl to try to kill you, or because you're a student, because you're a woman, or try to stop you to have an education. Like I said, the fact that you can do these basics is a privilege. And to me, overall, I say life is amazing, irrespective of our chronic diseases, our mental illnesses. Life is amazing. It does fly by in a blink. You can ask any grandparent. And I feel that overall, we got to take advantages of it. So that's sort of one thing I want to say. Second thing is, I do on my phone, I do want to, and it'd be great if people just type this part in, but I want to know, if you think of your life, if you think of watershed moments in your life, I have this belief that one single choice will change your entire life. The yes you said to a person you're dating, the yes or no you said to a job opportunity, the yes or no you said to go out to a bar where you could have met somebody, or you did meet somebody who changed the direction of your career. And I've had the opportunity as a BITSian who's worked in venture capital, finance, consulting, like a lot of different entrepreneurs now, to have seen paths of different careers. So when I have a conversation with somebody, I in 10 minutes, I can sometimes give them so many different perspectives, and they've gone off and truly changed their lives, not because of me, because they were able to ask me those questions. So I do believe that it's really important to recognize those moments when they happen. I actually write them down on my phone. So it's called watershed moments. I write them down and I say, try to learn to recognize those moments. Because you may be in a bad place right now, and this one meeting of a person, 1 5-minute meeting, you got to recognize when it's happening. It happens almost in slow motion, and then it's gone. It's brief. It's very brief, but you recognize the moments, because the choices and decisions you make can change the entire course of your life. And 1 year can completely be a very different world than you are living today. 1 year is a long time, even though life passes by in a blink. So I do think that overall, and sort of this is very generic, but I've seen this happen to myself. I can go 12 months and say, wow, my life is very different. I'm currently struggling to be an entrepreneur, but I do believe, like, I wake up one day and one thing that I do or hack mentally with whatever I'm doing can completely transform the direction of my startup. So, and then 12 months from now, I'd look back and say, oh my God, I can't believe I was there at this place, and now I'm here. It's a long journey you can traverse. So that's sort of two big picture things I'd say. And there's watershed moments. You have to learn to recognize them. So it's like your life prepares you to recognize those moments. They might happen totally coincidentally, but you're prepared to recognize them and take advantage of them and listen for them.
That is really well said. And if I have to kind of translate it towards the language in the mental health space, I would call it mindfulness. What you're saying is basically being in the present moment and being aware of what you are doing at that moment, and to be able to say that this is a defining moment. And that is the reason you're able to say that this is how it led me to that next moment, right? It's basically mindfulness. So you said it so beautifully. And watershed moments are what like change your life. And sometimes we don't notice them until we actually make an effort. And I think that's a part of mindfulness, to be able to say that I'm going to make an effort to recognize this present moment and then make it meaningful, or being able to say that this is how I define my next moment and the moment forward. And I think what you also shared is that, the social media effect, especially on young students, they're not being able to be in the present moment because they're just so lost in that whole scrolling, like, wanting to figure out who's doing, what, right? So then you kind of lose a sense of where you are at and what you are doing. And that kind of breaks that mindfulness and really puts you in a loop where you're like questioning your own self-worth, saying, okay, this person is doing this, and what am I doing? What I mean, and also it doesn't necessarily lead to like, what can I do better? It leads about like, oh, it's not good enough. Like what I'm doing is not good enough. And I think the narrative shift, the narrative, I mean, it's also a great opportunity for us to have all these avenues and platforms than ever before. I mean, I actually didn't have Facebook and social media when I was in Pilani. We had Orkut, but it was hardly anything, right? But eventually
I remember, I don't know what Orkut was, but I remember it. But I will say this, the BITSians for each other, it was not started by me, but BITSians for each other has truly come to represent. So I think one good use in the planet for Facebook, apart from keeping an eye on the photos of children growing up and, for a family, the one beautiful thing about Facebook is actually BITSians for each other.
Yes,
and if there was one reason for this generation to stay on Facebook,
it's that.
Even though most people don't, it would be BITSians for each other, because it's amazing how valuable it's been in terms of people getting on and being able to get some help. But let me make 2 or 3 more comments. Okay, the first one is, I'm not a mindful person. I have learned to, my wife will say that all the time, you're distracted always in your phone. If you know me, you'll know that I'm very responsive, and I, of course, am involved in so many things. So I'm always trying to be responsive to people, but it does make me less mindful. But I do have this ability to, when somebody said something, I lock it in and I process it and later say, oh shit, I get it now, or I pick it up on it now. So the one way to recognize moments is, I'd say, pick a moment in life. Let's say Tisha's just recently graduated, but let's say Tisha recently graduated and she has an idea of what she's doing. We tend to, in this generation, because of the way we are, we don't think about long-term plans. We don't make long-term plans, which is fine. But you want to have a sense of that you want to achieve a watershed moment. You want to achieve something specific. So when I was in Pilani, I was not a good student. Okay, I came in with all these dreams. I was very good at making things. I'm a visual learner, and I came to Pilani and I got hit with linear algebra and vector subspace.
Lineal, that's what you call it.
Lineal, yeah, lineal. I know. I got hit with lineal, and my entire world, dreams of being an engineer, collapsed in lineal, because if I cannot see a vector subspace, I cannot screw it in. I cannot do anything with it. I cannot understand what I do with it. But I look back in hindsight and I say, okay, why? And I became an instrumentation engineer, which I realized I was not a good instrumentation engineer either. The reason is because I could not. I grew up making things and building stuff. I used to build Ravans every year and big these 6-7 foot Ravans at home and try to put stuff together. I was very creative.
Yeah.
Instrumentation is not a creative field. It is much more about mathematics, and EEE is. And I realized, looking back, I should have done mechanical engineer, maybe engineering, at least a part of mechanical engineering. I would have been as a visual learner. So I'd say, like, when you think about who you are, where you go,
I'm a mechanical
I feel like you are a mechanical. So I feel like when you do these things where you sort of look within and say, okay, what am I good at? You know, then it makes life easier. I was never stressed out at Pilani. Actually, I have to say I'm fortunate that I'm not easily stressed out. I don't have anxiety. I have stress and anxiety related to my kids. I've had very challenging moments in my life where I've actually been stressed and anxious, but because I'm not naturally stressed and anxious about very basic things, it makes my life a lot easier. I have been born with extra dopamine than most people. I don't know. I just feel that, so I'm always generally happier, though I wish I was more mindful, to your point, and I'm going to work on that point. But I think that is really important. So when you think about people who have anxiety, I think when I've had situations where I'm like worried about losing something, what I found great for myself is I say, okay, what's the worst that'll happen? So like, I remember having no money, and then I lost $500, which somebody had given me, and I really needed that money at the time. I was in England as a poor student, and I lost $500. But the minute I lost the money, I had no problems with losing it because I just woke up and I said, what's the worst that'll happen? Nothing's changed. I didn't have any money. I got the money and then nothing changed. So I really think that everything you do, and I'm just going back to Tisha's, everything you do, draw a roadmap that I want to achieve a watershed moment, for example, in the next 5 years. I want to do something that's a moment that's sort of, I look back because, we just a series of watershed moments that we'll remember at the end of our days. And if you don't achieve it, you think about what's the worst case scenario, you just be where you are. And I was a person who came in, I started off, I got I think when I got my core courses for electronics, I think electronics 1, I got a C, electronics 2, I got a D, electronics 3, I got an E. And then I'm glad there was no electronics 4, others never have graduated Pilani. So, but I walked out from there, and in hindsight, now I know why I should never have taken instrumentation engineering in the first place. I would have been so much better doing civil or mechanical because of the visual nature of those sciences. But it didn't matter anyways, because I ended up doing something I love, which has nothing to do with engineering. Though I loved engineering, and when my son turned 7 and started to build robots, I got so excited about what they're doing because it's a visual skill. What they're doing is very visual.
Exactly.
And now with this generation, I've been able to do that. I've been able to say, okay, you're good at this why, and really think hard of why you want to do this. And all these kids have gone on to engineering now, that a lot of them I coached for over the years. But I look back and say, look at what you're good at, look at where you're going, and if it doesn't work out, what's the worst that'll happen? We're still Pilani alums, and that's huge.
That's so important. And I think that's something that we need to share with especially a lot of BITSians graduating today. I think a lot of them are essentially kind of struggling with the idea that, okay, I did B pharmacy, but I don't think I'm passionate about it, right? Like, and then they want to get out of Pilani and do something different, and they feel completely lost because they don't know what is the next step. And I think that's where BITSians for each other and so many other ways that, we've done startup mentorship, we've done a lot of like the AMP initiative, which is the alumni mentoring program. So many initiatives that have come out, which actually help these people understand that, you may have done something at Pilani, but that is not the end of the world. If you think you can do something else better, or you have discovered something as a part of the journey while you are in Pilani. I mean, now we have like full-time dance teachers and, yoga instructors coming out of Pilani, right? Like they've spent 10 years being an engineer and then said, oh, I'm going to do something else because that's what I'm passionate about. And I think one of the more important aspects of the alumni community is to share our success stories and to be able to also kind of talk about how our journeys have not been linear. I'm not making a reference to lineal, but that they're not linear, and we've all had ups and downs. And as BITSians, we can still kind of say that, okay, this is my watershed moment that I want to achieve, and the journey is going to be like up and down. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to achieve it, and I have a network to fall back on. So I think that's a huge aspect of what we're trying to achieve with BITSAA. I've seen Srikanth has joined. Very exciting to have him. Maybe he'll have some questions for you later. But maybe I will try to kind of restrict my 2 questions so that we have more time for audience questions. And I think I wanted to specifically talk to you about the entrepreneur's mental health, but also student mental health. Like there's just so much pressure right now. And especially you have worked with like a lot of young BITSians who's starting up, and especially in today's cutthroat world and the pandemic. I mean, there's a number of factors involved here, but I think I wanted to kind of specifically get some insights from you on what you think young entrepreneurs especially can do today to kind of take care of their mental well-being. And I think this is something really important, and something that has touched both our hearts. We have discussed about it too, because we've lost entrepreneurs in the BITSian community, which is a huge loss to the network as such. And I think it kind of goes back to the point that the whole idea of BITSAA International was that no BITSian should feel lonely. So, and I think maybe some insights into that and takeaways for younger people especially.
Right. So I think the first thing, the worst thing that can happen is, and I've always been on this zero suicide movement. Happens every day, happens all over the world. to students. But suicide is unfortunately a permanent solution to what is usually a temporary problem. You can't come back from it.
Yeah.
And while it's destroyed the life of a person who's gone, it is much worse for those left behind. And I know that sometimes, looking back at Sesha, I know that if Sesha had just lasted one more year, he would be with us today and his life would be fine. He would have a nice car in a nice suburb with a nice wife and great kids, and have just lived life to the fullest. And he's a man of few needs. So I feel like that one moment that we lost him, took his life and put a permanent end to something that was so temporary. So I think that's the first thing that I think is important to think about is, in that moment, it's hard for you to know, when people take their lives, it's because the suffering so and the pain so outweighs everything else that they can cope with. It's the only thing that they think they've left to do. Somehow you have to get through it. And it's the people that make you get through it. So the first thing that I do believe, in terms of looking around you, I would say I have 5 people that I know who I have met through different parts of ways of my life, who I can say anything to. And these people do not judge me. These are these are 5 friends, not my spouse, 5 friends that I've collected over years, who I can have a conversation with and say things that are meaningful to me. So I would say this, the really important thing is to recognize toxic relationships with people. I see people who are 70 years old in the same dynamic with somebody else, with a person where the person is more, it's not a relation of equals. It was not a relation of equals when they were 20 in college. And then they're 70 and still that relationship has not changed. And sometimes relationships equal, and sometimes they switch around, but it's very hard to switch relations around that are not relations of equals. Even I'm very close to my siblings. I lost my father when I was actually in Pilani. It was a very tough time, but I recognize the value of my siblings and my mother, when you're down to one parent, the value of those relationships, they have to keep evolving. And at some point, for example, with my siblings, I have an older sister, but a much younger brother, where at some point they had to become relationships of equals. And if you're unable to make those relationships of equals, then those relations will break, because when you grow up, everyone wants to be equal. But if you don't see the toxic relationships with people who you don't recognize them, then those are people who will always either hold you back, or when you're in situations of most despair, you're not turning to the right people. So I do feel that, and it's easy to find this out. Actually, somebody in our family told me, she said, if you walk away from a relationship, from a conversation and a meeting, and you feel bad about yourself, that is not a good relationship. So just think about, I would just say, if you can name 5 people who you can say anything to, let's say start with one person, I can say anything to this person, and I know this person will be there for me, you are well on your way. If you can name one person. If you have 2 people in your life, or 1 person in your life who you walk away from every time and you feel bad about yourself, you got to get rid of the relationship, because life's too short, and these people, you don't want to carry this clutter through your life. And most relationships are where you can give more, or you can take more from, but as long as those relationships that you have with people, and I know I have friends like that, I have friends who I can do much more for than they can do for me, and there's some people who can do much more for me than I can do for them. That's fine, but I don't feel bad about talking to them or asking them for stuff or doing stuff for them, and and they don't feel that way. The relationship is not in any way toxic. It's a rich relationship where boundaries are established, but it's a relationship mentally of equals, even though there might be more give or take than other. That's really important, because that's when you have that, you can get through that with life. And when I look at older people, and of course we've watched the TED videos, and at the end of the day, all that matters is those relationships. So if I look back on my life and I say there was somebody to cry when I was gone, then it would have been a life worth lived. If you think about money, people really focus on money. I do want to mention this point. Our parents will for the most part, they might have struggled their whole lives, but at the end, they'll have more than they needed. And so will we, and so will our kids. So if money is going to gather dust, most money will gather dust, then it's not about the money. However hard lives may be, especially in your 40s, when you have the highest expenses and the most work pressures, those are very tough times. But we know that as a BITSian, and you mentioned B Farm, So I'll make a point on that in a second. But
I picked up a regular conversation on BITSians for each other saying, "We farm. I don't want to do pharmacy."
I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that. But just recognize relationships, and if you can walk out with relationships at the end that were more intact, and you worked on them and you kept them, it's amazing. And being BITSians, we have this opportunity, at least as when we're on the campuses, to be in situations to build amazing relationships, and it's a matter of just trying to maintain them and keep them. And sort of that's what I find has been the most important, because at the end of the day, if you, and I've seen this with people who've taken their lives. We had somebody, a BITSian in SLP, who took his own life because of cyberbullying by his co-founder after a long time. And but he didn't tell anybody. So if he had told people about some of these things, that he might have been saved and protected, because he built an amazing company and he was doing all the things that were right. But I think he just did not share the pain.
Did not share with his own spouse, as far as I know. I mean, and he had a small baby, and
yes,
I think it's not just to do with the BITSian community, but it's the overall startup space where I think there's a lot more competition about, like, like your investors could pull out if they find that, you're struggling mentally or having any kind of issues. And I think there are several other factors to it. But I think, like you said, it's not just about, like money, but actually about the relationships. If he had reached out to any BITSians and supported and got the support, that could have changed the whole equation for him, probably.
Yes.
I definitely agree to that, and I have to say, like, I mean, I have friends from BITSian days, of course, but interestingly, I have a lot more friends that we connected later, like, my batchmates. Probably we were not even, like, we would say we are acquaintances, batchmates, but we became friends much after Pilani through other circumstances. So it's not just about, like, who became your friends during Pilani, but even beyond that, there's so many people you might have just met on campus a few times, but they become a part of your life in a greater way after Pilani as well. And then that has been something that has really been amazing for me. I've picked up friendships much later after Pilani. And now with BITSAA International, I get to work with, like, wonderful teams. So, like, like literally, like people who are on fundraising team and the Sahaaya team. I count them as people I can reach out to, and, like, we're friends. I mean, that is the beauty of, like, a network like this. You don't need any other thing but the fact that you're also a BITSian. You should just share alma mater. And the fact is that I have always seen that BITSians are never judgmental. They're always open to help. And I think what we really need is the word to be out there that, we are here to help each other, and no BITSian is lonely.
Yes, very well said. Absolutely.
So yeah, I see you made some notes as well. And
just keep the chat alive.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna stop here. Like, I've finished, like, my Q&A. I would like to invite anyone else, if you have questions for Anupendra, please go ahead. Just unmute yourself and ask anything.
Or you could just put it in the chat. You can just put in the chat, and I'll just answer. Ask anything you want. I think that's good too.
And as we wait for people to, like, frame questions and come up with questions, maybe I'll ask you about the one not unmemorable role in theater during Pilani days.
So there were two. One was a memorable role. Was actually, I don't remember the name of the play, but I was the son, and there were three. This was an alternate group on campus. So that I'm just seeing somebody wrote some. Okay, very cool, Vijay Kumar. Okay, so I had definitely got a role where in a play where I was the only kid, and then there were my parents, and then my and there were 3 or 4 other couples, and then for some reason they all decided to make money by becoming prostitutes and and pimps, and I was the kid in there who's supposed to not know what's going on, and I get drunk and I start yelling at them, and that's, I was like, I look back at as the high and low point of my my theater career on campus. Is the most bizarre play that I did. And then the other one was a Hindi play where I played the role of a gay guy who's bullied and eventually ends up taking his own life.
Oh, wow.
In the play.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful play, and there's a very
that
emotional role.
yeah, that sounds very powerful, like, to me.
Yeah, and then
especially,
in that, but unfortunately, due to my own mistake and some snags backstage, I almost hung myself, and the play has a very powerful ending, but the ending got messed up. It was a great dress rehearsal. The ending got messed up because in the end they were trying to save me from getting strangled.
Oh my God.
And as bizarre as as coincidental as it sounds, the woman who saved me was Ram Kripa, who held my leg so that I wouldn't choke. And I always say, Ramji ki kripa hai that I'm still alive, but it's literally, like, she's a famous designer who designed all the Mahindra trucks at Pilani, but she was on the backstage, and she actually saved my life. So
wow. Oh my God, those are very interesting stories, and I can't even imagine. So these were all on stage. These were stage plays, right? In the audience.
Yeah. So the one was a smaller play in was C Group Theater, or there's some other theater, C Block Theater, and then the other one was in Nukkar Natak. So it was actually in the
Sky. Was it in Sky Lawns? Yeah.
No, Nukkar Natak was actually in D Block in the I think it was in D. There's D Block. There's a lawn in the back. In one of the inside lawns. Maybe it doesn't exist now.
Okay, QT. We call
QT,
it
that's
QT.
That's right. It was called QT back then. I forgot the name. QT. It was in QT. And it ends with me getting hung from a corner, and there's a bonfire, and you can see me in the bonfire. It was actually very scary.
Wow.
But it ended up being a complete shambles, and I sort of wish I hadn't screwed up. It was my mistake. I wanted to make it more realistic, so I did something against the advice of backstage, which I shouldn't have.
Okay. I mean, also, I did a bunch of street plays. We had them in Sky Lawns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Shrikant knows. I think you guys are the same batch, right? You and Shrikant?
No, I think Shrikant is younger. I'm 87. Shrikant is 90. 88. Okay, I thought Shrikant was 90.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention one more thing about mental stress. So I find when I was in England, I was very isolated. I was definitely lonely. I moved from India to England. It happened within a few months of my father passing away. So I left my home and I'd gone to England. I was in Manchester, and I was born in England. So I had this sort of idea of England being very different than I was. I get to England and I'm in Manchester, it wasn't a great place to be racially in the 90s. If you're Indian, Manchester is a tough town. On top of it, and I had no money, and I worked in a Pakistani restaurant, and it really sucked, and I made no money, and then I had that, and then I got a job in the library at University of Manchester, for which I'm super grateful, because that allowed me to at least have some money and have a little bit of a normal existence.
I
walked out saying I'm not going to get money from home. I'm going to do this all myself, and then reality hit, and then I was able to, with the library job, do a lot of interesting things. But my coping mechanism for that isolation that I felt when I first got there was actually to dance. I choreo from Pilani, but I'd put on music and dance, and I always felt that was a good way for me to cope and feel good about myself. So I think that's important to think about. What are your coping mechanisms? What make you feel good? And just do those. I think those are super valuable. When you got nothing, then you say, what's my go-to when there's nothing? And the other thing was, for me, was the Hanuman Chalisa. Actually, when I was leaving India, my mom took me to the and then they gave me a Hanuman Chalisa. I would read that every day, and I felt like those two things helped me get through some very tough times in my first year of leaving India, with my father dying, and all the things weren't sort of falling into place. Academically, everything fell into place. I got there, and 6.7 in Pilani, this was so much easier. It was stuff I love to do. I was accounting and finance. I didn't go to class, and I graduated, I think, second in the class, and I had 5 jobs when I graduated. But it's because I was doing what I loved. But it didn't make me happy. Like you're getting the jobs, and it's still, you might do all the things you want, but it doesn't make you fulfilled. So to cope with fulfillment, I had these things. My dream still was to go work on Wall Street. So this was a step that actually took me down the path to achieve that goal. But in the end, I look back at everything and all these interesting, what may appear to be interesting things to do. And ultimately, all of them are like, Wall Street is a very brutal place. I enjoyed the work. I didn't like the people. So you'll often be in situations where you don't like the people. Most of the times, you won't like the work. But I'd say stay in whatever job you do for at least 2 years, because I think people put too much on passion. I think being good makes you passionate about something. Absolutely. If I was good at instrumentation engineering, I would be passionate about instrumentation engineering because I'd be good at it. Sometimes you become good at something, and sort of my careers, I had 8 years of M&A and 12 years of venture capital. I happen to be good at both those things. But ultimately, I'm also like, I was good at those things, but ultimately got tired of those things. I was like, I can't do another investment. I can't do another acquisition. And it may sound cool to somebody else, but you have to live with this every day. So ultimately, it has to be, I'd say I'd like to make sure when somebody says, I don't find this interesting, I see people with, every 1 year, there's a pattern of people who just run away from things every year or so. At least try something for 2 years. It takes you 1 year to even understand what you're doing, and then takes 1 year to say, okay, I'm good at it. That's one thing. And then try to, if you want to move things, actually have an honest opinion of, am I good at this thing? So you'd have some real core strengths, right? You had a passion to travel to Antarctica and do those things, that you do. You built up to those things, and you became good at those things, but you had to build your fitness and all these things to do the things you wanted to do. And I think it's
the watershed moment, like to lead to that watershed moment, you have to, go through.
You built the foundations for it, and those will change. So you might get to the end of the journey. You might have gotten to Antarctica, you loved it, but if you might have gotten to Antarctica and say, wow, this is not that exciting, and that's okay. It's a moment, you achieve that moment, and then you say, okay, what's my next step in my journey? And you use those foundations as stepping stones. And I think that's really important to do that. But give it time and go with knowing what you're good at. People wake up and say, oh, every day to me, I want to be in venture capital, but you're neither an entrepreneur, nor you understand people, networks, nor you have money. And that's okay. Now you have sort of access to networks that need money. So I was like that. When I said I want to be a VC, it was because I joined Siemens Venture. I joined BITSAA, and I started Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership at Pilani. And I got in touch with, I got to know all these entrepreneurs. So when I knew nothing about entrepreneurship, having a chance to use my finance skills with these people to be able to have those conversations allowed me to then take the next step. And venture capital is a stressful job, because when you invest in companies and those companies lose money, I have lost sleep. So, and my anxiety has come from like, oh no, this company may not work out, and I want every of my startups to work out. And eventually the one that worked out in the end, but it was stressful for a while. So just because you may wake up and say, I go to the bar and say I'm a VC, and it sounds cool, ultimately you have to live with that job every day. So whatever it is, you have to be good at it. If you're good at it, you probably love it, and you may get passionate about it. And if you don't, you can move on from it. But to be in jobs for a very long time that you're not good at, you don't really love, is not valuable either. So give something 2 years. Definitely don't give it more than 5 years if you don't like it. Move on to something else. And that sort of, a lot of things will fall into place because of that. If you're home, I'd say there are 3 or 4 pillars, maybe your health, your family when you're older, your health, your family, and your job. These are sort of 3 pillars. In your family, you have 2 pillars. You have the health of your children, and you have the sort of relationship with your spouse. They're almost like 2 half pillars. If any of these things falls, it's like living on a tripod. If any of these things breaks, the whole thing becomes unstable. But you can at least try to balance on 2 things if a third one is unstable. But if you have 2 unstable things, it's a lot harder. So try to have as little instability as possible. And if something is really unstable, focus on fixing that and not worry about the others. So if you're in a toxic relationship at work and your health is not working, then you need to get out of your job so you can really
Yeah.
work on what's important, which is the health. So,
Exactly.
and of course, it'll be different for everybody, and everyone's priorities are different. But to me, it
Right.
always goes back to that sort of relationship thing. Got to find a way to make those work, and then everything else falls into place because life is beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Biggest takeaway is like, life is beautiful, of course, like how you ended it. But I think the idea that, you always have passions, you can, and what you're good at, that's something that you need to figure out. But I think what you mentioned specifically about coping mechanisms, it's like you have to figure out what works for you. I think it was dance for you then, and it's always been dance for me as well. And I think having any art in your life, any aspect of art, like, you might not be great at it, but if it brings you joy, you should be doing it. You should be doing more of it, and making, making it a part of your like routine, or part of your like a ritual. In fact, even like you mentioned about Hanuman Chalisa, it's actually a part of mindfulness. It's a ritual that grounds you, like calms you, because it kind of, again, it has to do with your breathing, and a lot of like focus, right? So I think, and I use Hanuman Chalisa a lot when I was in Pilani as well, just FYI. And there's a Hanuman Mandir very close to Meera Bhavan. I don't know if you're aware. I don't know if it was there back then, but
it is. Yeah, we never went to it.
Yeah, but it's right next to Meera Bhavan, and I didn't discover it until.
No,
I've
never been inside that.
Yeah, and I did discover
it was there. We never went inside it.
Yeah, there is one, and it's a little tricky. You have to go on this small pathway. I didn't discover it until the end of my second year that there's a Hanuman Mandir.
Oh, I see.
So close to Meera Bhavan, like it literally walked to it. And yeah, it's a tree under a tree behind Shivji. Exactly. Yeah. So
see, the girls are better dressed at Saraswati Mandir, so that's where we would go for the stress release.
That's a very funny thing, but yeah, but obviously if you're going to Saraswati Mandir, you have to dress up, because obviously there's professors also coming there and stuff like that. But yeah, for Meera Bhavan, it wouldn't be a problem walking to the Hanuman Mandir. And yeah, I use Hanuman Chalisa as a grounding mechanism, and going to the Hanuman Mandir then Pilani, just finding it was like a big wow. Like, okay, I found a place to go actually sit and, meditate and, like read the Hanuman Chalisa. I actually like knew it by heart at some point when I was in Pilani. I think I lost it out, maybe if I start saying it now, I'll say the whole thing. But I think, having things like that which ground you, which enable you to kind of slow down in the moment and be able to kind of remind yourself that, we have things in life that are really beautiful and that we can always go back to. And I think relationships, making time for relationships, making time for art. There's such amazing life lessons and key takeaways from the session. I'm blown away. I don't know if anybody has any questions anymore, but I think, definitely open the floor. Even if not questions, maybe comments. Like Shrikant, would you like to add something to the conversation?
Yeah, I would love it if somebody wants to just, you could put it in text also, a single watershed moment in your own life. I think that I would love to hear that.
Okay. Hi, Anupendra, and hi, Divya. You mentioned my name many times, so I do need to chip in. Okay, the watershed moment in my life was Oasis of, Apogee of 92. I was doing my PS2 in Calcutta, and I had come to BITS to present a paper on music during Apogee, for which I won the first prize as well.
Oh, wow.
But I then happened to run into the Dairo then. He said, what are you doing? What are your plans for the future? I said, sir, I tried for CAT. I didn't get in. So maybe stick around and study for next December's CAT. That means 91 December CAT, I didn't get it. He said, no. Will you like to join us? I'll give you a degree in management. That, I believe, was the defining moment in my life when someone said, I see some good in you. I see some potential in you. We are willing to invest in you. Oh. And will you like to join BITS? So I got my MPhil degree from BITS. There were just two of us who got the degree in all its history for the last 30 years. It was a degree specially created for two of us. And I didn't get my management degree. And okay, that's what I am today. That was the watershed moment. various other things are there, but I wouldn't remember any other moment as much as I remember that conversation outside his office when he said that you are a useful guy. I will employ you and I will give you a degree. I think that faith and trust is what changes people.
Yeah.
I think that's something that people should understand, that there are people around you who have faith and trust in you. If you realize that, then you find a purpose in life to live. If you don't understand that, then that's a huge problem. And one of the reasons was the point was, what do you go to BITS for? You go to BITS not to have a goal towards a degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I enrolled for MSc Economics, slided up to Chemical Engineering. I did 3 courses in music, and I shifted my line to management, and that's what BITS allows you to do. So what I believe is what should go into the first year rights to avoid a bit of the stress that we have discussed in the last 1 year, 1 hour is, I mean, I joined at 8 o'clock, but then I believe this was a discussion, is the university teaches you to learn for life. If you understand that life lesson, then you can face any challenge.
Absolutely.
You are not expected to know everything in your life as well.
Yes.
If you know which book or which resource, today it is online or it can be a guide through your network. If you know which one of the resource, a guide or a book has the knowledge you have, then your life is made. When you need it, call that guy or look up that book. You are not expected to know everything. You don't, you don't demean your professor or someone by saying that, hey, he didn't know this answer. No one is expected to know everything. You are expected to learn to live, learn to search for knowledge, and learn to network. If that's what BITS has taught me, I think my 50 years of life till today, that's what keeps me going, network. So this is what I wanted to share here, and that's my chip in bit. Thank you, Divya.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I know more about your kind of the amazing things you have done as a part of the BITSian community, but I think this is something that even I didn't know about you. Thank you for sharing that, and the idea that, as BITSians, we're capable of so many things, and BITS obviously gives us that environment, in many ways. So really, I think what if something that BITSians need to share more about is these stories and journeys, where we know that we're capable of so much more together as well. We could really kind of achieve a lot more. So thank you for sharing that. All right. If there are no more questions, I think we're nearing the 1 hour mark. So I think I would like to kind of bring the session to a close for now. We will have an internal celebration. I'll stop the recording, but we'll have an internal celebration post this. But so for for our speaker, of course, this has been such an honor, Anupendra, because we know the story a little bit, but to hear it from you, only in a way that, has shown us how much emotion and passion has gone into building this beautiful community around the world, globally, across 7 continents, I would say. Hats off to you. It's an honor to share space with you and to be able to get this story out more, and with people further in the community who are joining every day. Have more and more people joining the community. So this is something that I will always share with anybody who comes in contact with me now. Thank you for that. So many amazing life lessons. So much from your own journey, but also your wisdom that you have kind of shared with us here today. Thank you for that. Thank you for making time, especially today on World Mental Health Day. A thank you note to Shrikant. He's been a huge champion before BITSAA Sahaaya was formed. He really grounded me and helped me take this initiative off the ground. Thank you. Pramila has joined. Thank you, Pramila, for your immense support. And more than anything else, thank you to the amazing Team Sahaaya, which has been the heart of the initiative. So Shipra, I don't know if Saket is here, but Tisha and Hardik, of course. Thank you everyone for this joining the session today, all the audience, and looking forward to keep these conversations going for BITSAA Sahaaya. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Divya. Can I just say before you stop recording, just say thanks to everybody. You know, BITSAA is what it is because of all of you. You know, we started the work, we did it a lot for 10 years, but then to build it and grow it to what it is, it's the efforts of people like you. And I think mental health is one of the probably, that's how we got started. So the fact that Sahaaya is now 1 year old is congratulations to all of you for making it, formalizing it in a way that's valuable, and then for the support that BITS now gives to BITSians in a way that's helpful. So thanks. Srikanth has, of course, been one of the early guys who's, you know, been with us all the way through. And people like Pramila, who are sort of young, getting started, but now as CEO of BITSAA, and she can see the value of, you know, I saw how I was transformed in my own thinking because of this network. I think you certainly, people like Pramila who are at the center of all this will see how her own thinking has transformed because of all these amazing networks she built. You know, I am grateful to all the BITSians. I am certainly very grateful to my wife, because only by having a spouse when you're married with young kids can you have built BITSAA, because you had a spouse who was understanding because of it. And then certainly I do see that our kids see what a crazy, amazing network we are. So I think for them to be able to see this and to wish that they have networks like this, this is sort of unparalleled, I think, in the world.
Absolutely.
Because of thousands of BITSians who put it together, and a lot of supporting spouses who are not even BITSians around the world. Thanks to all of them.
Thanks to the entire ecosystem, and thanks for creating BITSAA. And with that, thanks again, and look forward to another celebration in a year from now.
Yes. Okay, and I can stick around if you want to do